So first, I apologise for the lighting conditions. I wouldn't normally film this time of the morning because the sun's streaming in from that side, and I have got a light on the other side, but it's not enough to balance out the sunshine. And I don't have curtains on that window, so I can't block the sun out. But I'm waiting. It's quite early in the morning, and the rest of the family are getting up. So I wanted to just block this out quickly before everyone gets up and before I go and do my workout and get ready, so that it'll be dry by the time I want to go and sit in the garden and knit. So this is the new lace sweater I'm knitting. I have knitted about just about 20 centimeters, and I want to stretch it out because this will stretch and grow quite a bit. So at the moment it measures 49 centimeters wide, and I would need it to be 70 centimeters wide. So that's 20 centimeters of stretch. I worked out my tension on fairly big swatch. If you watched the first video on the design process, you will have seen that. I talked there about the fact that lace tension can sometimes lie. So I'm going to pin this out and see what it turns out like. So what I'm going to do first, I don't want to soak this. I've left it on the needle. So what I've basically done is I've knitted just over half of the stitches onto a longer needle. One circular needle is longer than the other, so I basically knitted enough on so that I have a bit of leeway when it comes to stretch on both sides. So I'm a bit worried that one needle might still be a little bit too short, but we'll see. So I've got a spray bottle, so I'm going to spray it on one side. I don't want to soak this. I could have put all the stitches on a piece of waste yarn and soaked it, but I couldn't bother to do that. So I'm going to spray it quite liberally on one side, and then I'm going to flip it over. And then I have markers where my sides are, and I don't know whether you can see that, but there's a marker here. So I know that that's blue marker is the beginning of the round. So I'm going to take one of my short, I do apologise that the light is so bad, but it is because the sun's streaming in from the side. But hopefully I'll give you an idea of what I'm doing. Normally I would put half the stitches on one needle and half on the other, but I have got slightly more than half of the stitches on one needle because one needle is longer than the other. So that's the marker on this side, so I know that that's the other side. So I'm just going to put and then I'm going to check how wide I need this to be. So I'm going to just measure. My plan was to actually block this out before I went to bed last night so you could dry overnight, but my husband and my daughter's computer equipment were on here because this is where they're working from. So I didn't get a chance to do that. So I'm just going to put it's just off the camera actually, I'm just going to put a blocking pin, and then I'm going to measure 70 centimeters from there. And then I'm going to put a blocking pin over on this side. I know it is just off camera, but there we go. And then I'll kind of move the camera around a bit. So that's where the blocking pin is. So I'm going to pin this out on this side, right up against the blocking pin. And I'm using my neck blockers to actually pin it out with. Oh. Try not to keep knocking the camera. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side, which you can't see at the moment. But at the moment, I'm not being too kind of thorough. I've been making sure I've got the exact sides, and as long as I got the fabric kind of in half, that's fine. And then I'm just going to put right on the bottom here. I'm just going to put some of these along the bottom here. Now normally what I find when I soak it properly and pin it out properly for like the final blocking, it does end up slightly bigger than when I pin it out like this. I call this mock blocking, and I find when I block it properly it does pin out slightly bigger. I also the bottom edge is actually supposed to be scalloped, but I'm just gonna pin it out flat at the moment just because it's quicker. I can hear people are upstairs. They're going to be coming downstairs soon, and probably be annoyed if I'm here filming stuff. So I'm just trying to do this very, very quickly. Probably should have done it when I first got up, about an hour ago, but I was knitting some swatches for something else instead. And I do apologise that this is a little bit dark and a bit awkward to see, but I just wanted to film it very, very quickly. Okay, so I'm going to now stretch this as much as I can. And then I'm going to put you can use pins or you can use these nip blockers. I'm using nip blockers. And then I'm going to go over this side and do the same thing. The main thing I want to measure is I want to make sure the width is okay, but I also want to measure the length. One thing I have to be careful about now is that my stitches don't come off my needles, because you can see here, well, I don't know whether you can actually because it's a bit dark, very close. I could have probably done with putting them on 2 longer circular needles, but I didn't, and I'm kind of regretting that now. So I'm going to go around the other side of the table and I'm going to stretch this out as much as I can. So now I've got to be really careful that my stitches don't pop off the needles. So it's probably, safest thing is probably put them on a piece of waste yarn. I would say that's the safest thing to do, and then tie the ends together. But I'm a bit lazy, I can't bother to do that. So I haven't. Right, I'm also going to check that I've stretched it out the same amount on the sides. So that's about 31 centimetres. That's a bit further. So I'm going to release it a bit on the left-hand side. So I'm just keeping an eye on my needle tips at the moment to make sure I don't lose stitches, because I don't want to take the pins out and then find I got a load of stitches I got to pick up and I've got to do a bit of a rescue job. That would not be fun. If you do this on the needles like I do recommend longer circular needle. I do have longer cables, so I could have easily put on longer circular needles. It was just laziness that stopped me doing that. So either put it on longer circular needle or take the needle tips off and put the end stoppers on, if you've got interchangeable needles. That will give you a bit more kind of security. So this is stretched out pretty taut now. It isn't completely straight, and like I said, this bottom edge will be scalloped. But I just want to check that is nearly 70 centimetres. What I also got to bear in mind is the fact that when I take the pins out, it will relax a little bit. So I'm going to just spray it with water, pat it in. I'm going to see if I can stretch it a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this while I go and work out and get dressed, shower and get dressed. And then when I come down, hoping it'll be dry, because I do actually need this table to record something else today. So I'm hoping this will be dry. And then what I'll do is I'll take the pins out, leave it for half an hour or so if I can. And then I'll measure it again and check the measurements. Another thing I'll do is I'll measure this distance and put a marker at the end of a repeat. So I'll work out where the repeats are, because at the moment I'm halfway through a repeat. And then I'll make a note of that as well, so I can use that to help me work out exactly how long I need to knit it before I get to the underarm. Now I can obviously do that using the tension measurements I did originally for my swatch. But what I'm doing now is I'm basically just checking that the tension measurements I did for my swatch are actually correct. Because I do quite often find with lace knitting especially when it's an all over lace pattern like this, I do quite often find that the tension measurements lie. So the tension you get on the small piece isn't necessarily the same tension you get on a bigger piece. Quite often it will stretch out more. If you imagine that a small 10 centimeter swatch might grow by, let's say 10%. A bigger piece with more stitches may grow by more than that. That's my concern. That's why I do like all of the lace patterns, but sometimes when I design for magazines, I quite often do like lace patterns, say in the middle or on the sides on the rest stocking stitch. Gives me more flexibility when it comes to sizes, because I don't have to rely just on the pattern repeat multiple if I have stocking stitch areas. It gives me a bit more flexibility with sizes, but it also reduces the risk for the tension swatch basically lying to you. Anyway, I'm going to leave this to dry, so I'm sorry the lighting isn't great. Hopefully by the time I come back downstairs again, the sun will have moved around a bit and I can just give you like a quick, I'll add a little video to this just showing what it looks like with better lighting. So this sweater has now been blocking most of the morning. I did make it a little bit too wet, I think, when I first pinned it out, so it's taken a few hours to block. It's coming out about the right width. It's 1 centimeter smaller than what I wanted it, but I think I'm happy with that. There is a chance when I block the final piece it'll stretch out a bit more anyway, because this wasn't soaked properly or, you know, blocked properly really. Another thing I've done is I put a marker here. So that's after 3 repeats of the main stitch pattern. So I did 4 repeats of the first stitch pattern of the edging, and then that's the main stitch pattern. So I made a note of how much it measures from the hem to that marker, and also how much it measured for the 3 repeats of the chart B that I've done. And I can use that then just to check that my row tension in the pattern was correct, and to help me work out when I need to start the add the stitches for the sleeves without having to pin it out and check it again like this. Although I may do that just to be on the safe side. But I'm happy with the size of it, so I can now put it back onto one circular needle and carry on with the knitting. I do recommend, especially with the pattern that has an all over lace pattern, I do think it's a good idea to check the width after a while. You need to knit about 20 centimeters to be able to do it. This now measures about 25 centimeters, nearly 26 centimeters. I think before I pinned it out, I think it was 20 centimeters. So it's grown by about 5 centimeters lengthwise, and it's grown by quite a bit more widthwise. So when you're knitting something in an all over lace pattern, it's very difficult to tell what the final size would be just from measuring what's on your needles. You really do need to block it. I always think it's worth checking the width, especially on any knitting, any garment knitting you do. Just make sure that it's coming out the right size. Even if you've checked your tension before you start knitting, I think it's always worth double checking. But do at least 20 centimeters before you double check it, because before that it's not really enough to really get the full idea of the width. What I find is when you have less on your needles, like say 5 centimeters, it seems to stretch out a lot more. So knit about 20 centimeters and then lay it flat and measure it. If it's lace, pin it out. You can pin it out dry, or you can just spray it with water to make it damp like I did. Obviously then you have to leave it to dry, so it takes a bit longer. Thank you very much for watching.